There's a couple things that I saw. I do want to react to them, and this first one is in reference to Slipknot. Now, the group has parted ways with their percussionist, Chris Fenn. Now, let me just say right off the top, Chris Fenn was probably, because Slipknot is a group that they have seemingly many extra members, and I'm sure that a Slipknot purist can tell me the integral pieces of each member, and what they're doing, and I understand that they all have their own role, but essentially you got a couple guys, some of them are just banging on tin cans. But Chris essentially was my favorite because he was the most entertaining. He had the coolest mask. His mask stood out, and he would always, do funny things and command attention on the stage. So he seemed to be quite a character. I've seen him interviewed, and I could always tell that he seemed to be quite outspoken. And that's definitely what's coming across here. So Slipknot has parted ways with him, and Chris decided to really go public with his side of all of this. And Chris alleges that the band members had an agreement that there would be profits received from merchandising and touring via a company, one company only, that divides the profits and essentially pays the band. So all of the payment for the merchandise would be going straight through this one company to the band. No questions, end of discussion. Now, Chris alleges that the band had launched several separate Slipknot business affiliates and entities in different states that he had no knowledge of that were paying out. So there were different places now, other than the one that they had agreed on, paying out to members of Slipknot that Chris, and this is all alleged, that Chris alleges he had never heard about. So, this sounds like one of those classic unfortunate dilemmas. And, I've had people in bands on this show many times that have come on. We've talked about touring and, I guess the horror stories and the negative things that can really happen when you're in a band, and when you're in a band with especially people for a long time and you become close with them. Money can become a big problem. Ego can become a big problem. Royalties, merchandise, cuts, things like this. And it's unfortunate to see a group like Slipknot that's been going since the late 90s. Chris joined the group in 1998, falling apart over something like this. The second unfortunate part about this is the fact that it's gone public. Whether or not it's true that Slipknot was ripping off Chris and set up separate channels of merchandise income and were leaving him out of it, which sounds suspicious. But, again, whether or not that's true, and it would be, wrong if it was 100% true on his side, but there's two sides to every story. It should not be discussed publicly. This is something that should be discussed in a court of law and behind the scenes. For Christ's sake, Slipknot's wearing masks. Why don't they just put a new guy in the mask until they have it figured out and tell him to hit a tin can? This is unbelievable. But no, on a being serious though, nothing like this should ever be handled publicly. I've discussed this here on this podcast. I did a whole segment on TMZ Live about this in reference to Tommy Lee. When you handle your dirty work in public, people start to lose respect for you. So you should just keep it hush-hush and keep it on the down low. There were even Kiss shows where it wasn't Kiss. It was other people out in the makeup. I said that tongue-in-cheek, but I actually kind of meant it. Now, Corey Taylor, the vocalist of Slipknot, has reacted to these accusations coming from Chris. And unfortunately, his reaction came via Twitter. Now, like I said, I'm personally not a fan of when people react to things when they're in the spotlight in a public way. I've seen it done by many people. That's just my opinion. However, Chris and Corey, they're adults. They have their own opinions, and this is the way that they're deciding to handle things. Now, there was a tweet put up by a fan on Twitter towards Corey Taylor suggesting Anders Kolesfny, I hope I'm saying that right, as Chris Fenn's replacement. Corey said, "Fuck, I'd love that." Then a fan responded to that tweet saying, "Fuck, dude, that's a little dickish." And then Corey Taylor's response is, "You think that's dickish? Try being wrongfully accused of stealing money from someone you cared about and having a lot of your fans believe it." Good morning, by the way. So that was the quote. So now Corey has not see he's reacting to the statement, but now he's also making an accusation, because when you're saying wrongful accusation, you're then pointing the finger and saying this person is wrongfully accusing me, which in and of itself is an accusation. Now, this has all been done via social media. This is all being done, I think, it's at the expense of their fans, because now he's responding to fans. You know, who knows who this guy is? This guy might really love Slipknot, and now he might feel like he's in between two of his favorite musicians. You know, who knows? So this is just a very poor way of handling this. And I definitely wish Slipknot would have handled this behind the scenes, like gentlemen, to a degree. That's just my opinion.